They operate a small historic site on our behalf. That falls into a little bit of a gray area. They're organized as a nonprofit, and they're not included in this list. So by striking the language, it would just simply read, Minnesota Historical Society may contract for the management and operation of a site. So it could be a nonprofit or any of a number of other types of organizations.
Senator Drazkowski.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Kelleher, the pressing thing is this nature center that you mentioned. Is that the only example that you have right now that you need to contract with, that, or you'd like to contract with, that's outside of your scope in law now?
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, we also contract with the Lower Sioux Indian community to operate the Lower Sioux Agency historic site we have for a few years. Similarly, I could make an argument that they do history through their Tribal Historic Preservation Office, but that doesn't fall within this language. So.
Senator Drazkowski.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Kelleher, you tell me you're operating outside of the law right now?
Mr. Kelleher.
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, it's in a bit of a gray area. That's why we're here right now.
Senator Drazkowski.
Well, Mr. Chair, this is a bill to, and I've seen this other times in state government, but we have an agency that's violating the law, and they're bringing a bill before us to legalize what they're violating right now. I don't know that that is what we want the executive branch to be doing. I don't know that that's what we want our government agencies to be doing. I think they should get permission to do things before they go out and do things, and so that they do them according to the law. That's not what we're seeing here. Mr. Kelleher, or Mr. Chair?
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kelleher, how long have you been violating the law in this way?
Mr. Kelleher. Senator Drazkowski, did you have a response for that? Senator Cwodzinski.
Well, we're both Steve, so I can see your, so that might be where our similarities
Senator Cwodzinski.
Well, I just want to, before Mr. Kelleher answers, he's to Senator Drazkowski's comment. I mean, they're not breaking the law. He's concerned about operating in the gray area, and he came forward to say to prevent any misconstrued interpretation at some point. So he's we should be applauding the agency for coming forward at this point. So because they don't want to break any laws because of the gray area that he referenced.
Senator Drazkowski.
Oh, I had a question for Mr. Kelleher. Should I repeat it, Mr.
Mr. Kelleher.
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, as mentioned, we believe that the language creates some gray area. I wouldn't say that we're breaking the law. I think you could make an argument that the contract with the Lower Sioux Indian community could be construed as a local historical society because they take care of history for their community. You could make that argument, but I think some clarity in simply saying that we can contract with different types of organizations and leaving that a little more open would clear up that gray area.
Senator Drazkowski.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Kelleher, Senator Cwodzinski. I mean, I'm reading the law here in your bill right now. The Historical Society has the ability in law to contract with county, municipality, or a county or local historical society. Now, I don't know, I don't see historical or society in Lower Sioux community's name or in their mission, and construe would be the right term, Mr. Kelleher. If that's what you're trying to make that into being potentially legal here, I don't see the Lower Sioux community being a historical society. Can you explain how they're a historical society? Is it in their name? I would say, Mr. Chair, that'd be my question. Is it in their name, or is there something in their mission that demonstrates to you that they are a local historical society?
Mr. Keller.
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, there's no statutory definition of a local historical society as far as I'm aware. The Lower Sioux community has a tribal historic preservation office within their organization. That's their part of their group that preserves their own history. Those are, each tribe has a tribal historic preservation office to preserve their own history. And that's a standard thing that those types of organizations do. It is confined to their organization, and that's their mission is to preserve their own history and share history.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair and Mr. Kelleher, so how long have you been contracting with the Lower Sioux community?
Mr. Keller.
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it's been at least 10 years.
Senator Drazkowski.
So, Mr. Chair and members, we have a, and I don't know where the Historical Society falls in. If they're a branch of government, I think they're like a quasi-government, as I understand them. And we have law written around them and how they are to operate. And for 10 years, they have been contracting with at least one entity that doesn't fall within the law. And now we're, when do these agencies, Mr. Chair, and quasi-government agencies like the Historical Society, shouldn't they apologize before they come and ask for permission?
Is that a question, Senator Drazkowski?
That was my question. Maybe it's rhetorical, but I struggle with this. Senator Cwodzinski, instead of giving them, obviously their track record is that they are contracting with organizations that it's not clear to anyone they've got the ability to contract with according to law. Wouldn't we be better off with a bill if indeed they need to contract with the Lower Sioux community and the interpretive center that, I'm trying to remember how it was described.
Nature Center.
Nature Center. Shouldn't we include both of those in there instead of just giving them wide open access to contract with anyone they want? Because the way I see this bill is they could now, if this gets enacted in the law, contract with anyone in any organization, any person, any entity. I don't know that they've demonstrated a good track record for following the boundaries we gave them. Why do we throw away all boundaries in this case since they've got bad behavior in this area?
Senator Johnson-Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to push back. I don't think any bad behavior has been demonstrated. I'm not a lawyer, but I did write contracts on million-dollar construction projects for about 35 years before becoming a senator. And I would say that the word may is extremely problematic here. It's not tight enough. So I think, I don't want to speak for the testifiers, but that term may is not definitive. And if I was writing a contract, I would say the Minnesota Historical Society must or shall. The words must and shall are much more definitive. So how I read this is that, in fact, they may contract with a county, a municipality, a county, or or a county or local historical society, but the word must would be much better here. And with the word may here, that does open it up. And so I don't think there's been bad behavior here. I think our historical society does great work. I frankly would very much rather see them be able to decide who's going to manage the operation of their sites. Their overall goal is to manage their sites, and that's their core mission and vision. So I trust them to do that. So taking out the individual agencies that they may contract with, I think is fine. But what I more want to emphasize is I don't see bad behavior at all. I see them interpreting the best management of and operation of their sites within the context that the law says that they may contract. They're not told that they must contract or they shall contract, but they may contract. And so I just want to advocate for what I know to be an extremely stand-up organization, and we've been to their sites many times on the bonding tours. They're well-run, and I appreciate that they're coming to us now in order to remove the ambiguity. If we want to make this tighter, then I would encourage members to bring up an amendment. But I'm going to support this, and I thank Senator Cwodzinski for bringing it forward.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to echo some of the same comments about whether or not we just focus on figuring out what the list should say. But I guess I first want to ask a question to Mr. Kelleher. Is your operating budget, is it fully 100% tax dollars through the state? Is it partial tax dollars, or is it none at all? What do you use for your funding each year?
Mr. Kelleher.
Mr. Chair, Senator Matthews, our operating budget is a combination of state general fund dollars and earned revenue, admission fees to historic sites and the History Center, and donations from individuals and other various miscellaneous fees. So it's a combination of a variety of sources.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that. And I think that with the tax dollar aspect, even though it's a partial, I think the state does have an interest in making sure we know where that's being used and who it's going to and all of that. And so I would encourage, and I don't know if we can suggest a oral amendment right now. I think Senator Johnson Stewart's correct that maybe we should change may to shall, and then perhaps figure out what language needs to be for this tribal community, for this park and a nature center and things like that, rather than making it completely open-ended right now. It's not just you that's getting these questions from me, Mr. Chair. You were there in Energy yesterday when Commerce wanted to contract with non-governmental entities, and I had to drill down in them and say, who do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Who are they going to be? I think Minnesotans in a place right now where we deserve to have those answers. So I'd encourage us to work on maybe tightening the language or adjusting it to what you need rather than removing this altogether.
Senator Cwodzinski, this is your bill. It's your part. You know, I'd like to get your input on this.
I would think, I visited Minnesota historic sites for my entire adult life, and there more students visit them than probably come to the Capitol. And I respect Mr. Kelleher and the institution that he works with impeccably, and I'm sure they've done their due diligence in making sure that they brought to us a bill that was as perfect as they could come up with. And so I have full admiration for the agency and Mr. Kelleher's work. But he was going to say something. I hope he's not going to contradict me.
Mr. Kelleher.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to comment that the may versus must or shall wouldn't necessarily work to have must or shall in this situation, because we operate most of the historic sites directly ourselves, and we contract out for a number of the smaller sites, but not all of them. So saying must contract out would mean that we would not directly operate sites ourselves. So the may is permissive to give us the flexibility in cases where it's more appropriate to have a partner to operate the place on a day-to-day basis. And again, these are small historic sites that are not open 7 days a week. So, thank you.
Certainly. You know, I think, you know, I understand us trying to, you know, be prudent with this, about the language that we put in bills, but, you know, I know Mr. Kelleher has been great working with us, and the Historical Society has been great in offering assistance to many different organizations throughout the state. I don't view it the same way you do, Senator Drazkowski, and I think maybe that's how lawyers get paid. But I don't think that, you know, I'm glad you came to us to try to work language out. And I think there's many different agencies out there that we would love to have come in here that have, you know, language that's in the gray area. I'd encourage to support the bill as is, but it is your prerogative, Senator Cwodzinski. Looks like the path for the bill is to be laid over for possible inclusion. Maybe we can work on language if you guys are open, because I think if we change may to shall or must, I think it alters the meaning of the language substantially.
That's right.
And so
Mr. Chair?
I'm gonna go Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger and then Senator Lang. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Thank you, Chair. Just so I'm kind of clear, so how I'm reading it, is if we change this to must contract, that tells me that everything they do has to go to outside entities and they can't be done in-house. Am I interpreting that correctly? Okay, I would have to.
Certainly, I think that's how I read it, and
Okay.
so I think some work could be done on this with Senator Lang.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think there's probably a way to bridge this gap, right? Because in a former life, I actually ran one of those contracts for one of your local outstate sites. So understanding the need for, well, realistically, I don't know what the percentages of the sites that you run, but I know that, you know, there are some sites in outstate Minnesota that really do not have much coverage, you know, whether it's mowing the yards or taking care of picnic tables or whatever it may be. I think there is a way to allow you to do what you want to do with, whether it's a tribal agency or a local government agency. But also there is a formal process in the state of Minnesota that already exists through the Department of Administration for certified contractors as well. If you were to come back or have some sort of amendment that said, hey, we can, because I think honestly striking the language you have in here is probably doing you a little bit of a disservice. Because that would probably be, at least sitting at the table here would be my primary intent, is to work with those local governments. And whether that includes tribal governments or not, that's fine. But then if that process is exhausted, say, then you shall. It's not a may at that point, but at that point, then it's a shall have a contract with, you know, someone from the Department of Administration's certified list that have been, you know, well intended contractors. I think that's maybe, because even the other day, and thank you for coming the other day, even the other day when we talked about it, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that does kind of leave it wide open at the end. There's probably a way to tighten this up and probably make everybody at the table happy.
Yeah. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased that it's going to be laid over and have the ability maybe for the author and other members of the committee to work on it. And Mr. Keller, it's not, I don't dislike the Historical Society. You guys do some really good stuff. I just get frustrated when I see government entities or quasi-government entities come before us that are operating outside of the law. And members, we can't have government doing what they want to do and then coming back to us and having us basically validate what they did. Or ratify, Mr. Chair, what they did and have been doing, because then the tail is wagging the dog. The way our government is designed is that we are supposed to give them the authority to do things. And back to Senator Johnson Stewart's comments, you know, we haven't given them, we actually, in the way the statute is originally written, we granted them the authority to do that. That's why it says may, because we extended them the authority to contract in addition to their hired staff that they have. And so that's what they're looking at here. They're saying, well, we would like to contract with everybody or anybody or whoever we want. And that's what the bill says right now. I'm in pursuit of accountability for the money that the taxpayers in Minnesota spend, not only here, but other places, so that our agencies and organizations that we have law written for and their guidance are actually following our law. If we have one example or two example, or maybe there might be more than this. I know there's more than this. Unfortunately, it's a sad day in Minnesota, but of agencies that are operating outside of the law. The more examples of that we have, the worse our situation gets, and the more that those agencies will continue to do that if we continue to let that happen. So it's the accountability that I'm looking for here, and I agree. I think it could be rewritten, and I'm glad that it's going to be laid over, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
The last word, Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you for hearing the bill. Thank you for the lively debate. Senator Johnson Stewart, I think you missed your calling as a lawyer, so your apprehension in not being one is duly noted. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members, for hearing the bill.
All right, with that, Senate File 4637 is laid over for possible inclusion. Next up, we have Senator Clark, Senate File 4037.
Thank you.
And it looks like there's a testifier, Jason Wittenberg, from the city of Minneapolis. Senator Clark, whenever you're ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair Xiong. Thank you, committee. Senate File 4037 is a simple bill. It's a repealer. It would repeal subdivision 5 under Minnesota statute 462.35, which was written and adopted as part of the Municipal Planning Act of 1965. And as this law was written, it was only applicable to cities of the first class. So there's 852 cities in the state that this does not apply to, and 4 to which it does. Subdivision 5 requires the written consent of 2/3 of property owners within 100 feet of their property before they can proceed with a rezoning from a residential zoning district to a commercial zoning district. The reason this should be repealed is that we've got small entrepreneurs who are running into this hurdle, and it's one more hurdle that is in their way and from proceeding with their plans, and it creates a bit of a equity issue for folks who don't have the time and resources to obtain signatures, including from property owners who may be difficult to locate. Sometimes it's private equity and they have their headquarters in New Jersey, and you got to find your way there to get their signature. So this bill will not circumvent the typical legislative process within the cities, which normally involves public hearings. So think about those 852 towns that have their process. That's the same process as the remaining 4, Rochester, Duluth, Minneapolis, and St. Paul. They still have their public hearings. They have this extra hurdle. So this simply removes that additional step of obtaining signatures, which is unnecessary and burdensome. Removing or repealing this would enable practical development while maintaining the normal notice requirements and public input for zoning changes. So I hope you'll see this as I do, a simple change that will remove something that is not needed in statute. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Clark. Our testifier, Mr. Wittenberg, please state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jason Wittenberg. I'm a planning manager with the city of Minneapolis. This bill would, as the senator mentioned, would repeal the requirement to first obtain notarized signatures from 2/3 of the property owners within 100 feet of your property if you're rezoning from a residential zoning district to a commercial district. Over the course of my career, I've seen the impact of not allowing rezoning applications to move forward through the city's regulatory process until these signatures are obtained. It's frequently proven to be quite burdensome, particularly for people who are proposing a small business that requires that type of rezoning. Obtaining notarized signatures from neighbors can be difficult, even in situations that are really non-contentious or non-controversial. As was mentioned, that is particularly the case where your neighbors may not reside on the property where you are needing their signature. So a repeal of the statute would remove that extra step in the development review process in our state's largest cities. Here I'm holding an 11-page application form that exists primarily due to this statutory requirement. The city of Minneapolis would love to delete this from our website in 2026. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. With that, members, any questions or comments to the bill? Senator Clark, the final word.
Thank you, Chair. One of the questions I had was, why was this in there? And no one has been able to figure that out. It was done in 1965, and so nobody really knows why it was there, and so this is proven to really be cumbersome and not needed. So I thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further discussion, Senate File 4037 is laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you, Senator Clark.
Thank you, Chair.
Next up, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, Senate File 4149. And looks like there's a testifier, Betsy Hayes from admin. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, whenever you're ready, please, you may begin.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the committee. This is Senate File 4149. Basically, it's kind of a technical tightening up of some language regarding grants management at the Department of Administration. This clarifies that grants will be terminated for both individuals and entities when they're convicted of a criminal offense. It refines admin's authority to more narrowly approve agency-requested exceptions to policy requirements and provides further whistleblower protections in grant-related cases. And I can turn it over to my testifier for a more technical.
Assistant Commissioner Hayes, please state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Xiong and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Betsy Hayes. I'm an assistant commissioner with the Department of Administration. Senate File 4149 is what we consider our technical bill. It contains a handful of changes to the grants-related statutes, which are found in Chapter 16B. One of the changes involves a citation correction, and the others help improve grant administration. Just walking through quickly, in Section 1 on line 1.10, we clarify some language related to policy exceptions. This is generally exceptions will come in on an individual basis and not so much pertinent to the full grant program. In Section 2, we remove language that allows sharing identifying information about a person who is reporting fraud or waste in the grants process. We want to remove any hindrances or provisions that may give an employee pause when they want to report something. So this change is made to promote and encourage reporting. And then Section 3, the change contains the citation correction that I mentioned. And then finally, Section 4 provides a definition of recipient that was not previously defined, and so this adds some help and clarity and captures the individuals within the organizations, given that it's most likely the individuals that would be the named individuals in the conviction. So with that, we think these are helpful and practical changes, and we thank you for your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. With that, members, any questions or comments to the bill? Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, I like your bill. Thank you.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, the final word.
Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your words, Senator Drazkowski. I'm really grateful for this bill because I think it's one of these ways where we can take like a very succinct, tangible approach, really looking at what we can do inside the agencies to do what we can to address fraud very quickly. So thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, Senate File, seeing no further discussion, Senate File 4149 is laid over for possible inclusion. And with that, I'll be handing the gavel over to Senator Gustafson to chair the committee as I present my bill.
Senator Xiong, to your bill, Senate File 4367.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Senate File 4367 would update Minnesota law to allow qualifying local governments like cities, housing and redevelopment authorities, to responsibly use long-term equity investments to modernize their types of investments they make. This bill will provide local government entities better, more flexible financial tools while assisting in addressing Minnesota's housing crisis, redevelop underused property, and strengthen their tax base without increasing pressure on local taxpayers. By clarifying the permissible investments, this bill helps cities and HRAs put dormant capital to work in our communities while maintaining strong safeguards for public funds. And I have testifiers here that can go into further details on the mechanics of the bill.
All right, thank you, Senator Xiong. First testifier, Richard Cwodzinski, and I'm going to have you state your name for the record, and I'm really sorry about the way I probably mispronounced that.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Richard Cwodzinski, and I'm the political director for the Northern Midwest Regional Council of Carpenters. I'm here in strong support of Senate File 4367, and I'd like to thank Chair Xiong for carrying this bill. For a couple of decades, hundreds of union pension plans have invested a small amount of our portfolio in the Housing Investment Trust. We've gotten good returns while also benefiting from local Minnesota investments in housing projects right here at home. This unique effort has the potential to offer three key benefits: good returns, private investments in badly needed local housing, and construction jobs. This bill before you today simply allows some local cities and counties to invest in vehicles like the Housing Investment Trust if they choose to do so. We're in a housing crisis in Minnesota. We're nearly 100,000 units short, and our average first-time home buyer is over 40 years of age. This bill offers a unique market-based effort that can be a part of the solution with very limited risk. Support for this bill stems from a resolution passed by the Minnesota Building Trades, and we would appreciate your support as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have another testifier. I'm sorry, if you could state your name for the record, proceed.
Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity. I am Pat Harris with the AFL-CIO Housing Investment Trust. I've been investing for Minnesota communities for almost 3 decades, managing funds for over 350 Minnesota cities at all levels of the yield curve. I've lived 118A statute my entire investment career. I've been active in the Minnesota Government Finance Officers Association, and have served on the Finance Committee of the National League of Cities and the Treasury and Investment Committee of the National Government Finance Officers Association. I also served for a dozen years on the St. Paul City Council. 118A investments are largely safe, fixed income investments that are collateralized, insured, or otherwise protected by the government. 118A also includes certain commercial paper and mortgage-backed securities. As you know, 118A several years ago was expanded to allow investment in equity index funds, the stock market, for any county or city with a population of 100,000 or more, any county or city whose most recent GO bond rating in the prior 18-month period was AA or higher, and it was limited to 15% of reserve funds only. This represents about 170 Minnesota public entities, or under 20% of Minnesota communities. Schools are not included in that measure. Senate File 4367 allows for this exact same subset of entities, along with their HRAs, with the same 15% limitation to invest in fixed income mutual funds with a portfolio largely comprised of federally guaranteed securities. It does not require investment by a community and does not seek or require state revenue. The amendment stipulates that such funds should be registered with the SEC and that 80% of the investments must be federally guaranteed or insured at the time of purchase, and that the fund's mission is the creation of local housing, which we know is a critical issue in the state of Minnesota. Funds that meet these criteria would largely be comprised of securities that are already allowable for all public entities in Minnesota and at the current duration level of many Minnesota entities with long-term reserves under investment management. The risk profile of these such funds under discussion is significantly lower than existing statutory authority for equity index funds for this same subset of communities. As we look to solutions for both portfolio performance and housing, investment in these such funds can achieve fixed income investment performance and the creation of critical affordable, and workforce housing across Minnesota without direct city or county capital or general fund outlays. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak today.
Thank you. Members, any questions or comments? Senator Barr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess to the last testifier, whose funds are these to start with, and where are they currently invested?
Madam Chair, Senator, people that invest in such funds, are largely labor pensions and other public pensions. This measure will allow this certain subset of cities to invest, should they choose, their long-term reserves. Take, for example, like the city of St. Paul has a long-term investment portfolio managed typically with mortgage-backed securities on a long-term basis. Some of those funds would be eligible to invest in a fund like the Housing Trust that will in turn manage those investments prudently, be federally guaranteed at about 80%, and then use those investments to do critical bridge loans to housing developments in communities, typically in the region of the investment. So that was a long answer. Short answer, they're existing capital dollars.
Senator Barr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So these are, you can just nod on this one if you want to. These are pension funds, right?
Currently in the trust, Madam Chair, Senator, currently in the trust, it's pension funds. This measure will allow a small subset of cities and counties to invest their capital or reserve dollars that are long-term funds.
Senator Barr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is city money, city budget money, and I'm assuming that this subset is pretty much cities of the first class. But this is city reserve funds then that we're talking about, not somebody's pension money. I'm just trying to get a clarification on where exactly this new money that you're investing is sitting now that you want to allow this extra investment in.
Madam Chair, Senator, it would not be pension money. Those pension dollars are at the state, PERA, and other places. Right. This money would be the city's direct reserve funds, limited to 15% of that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, any other questions or comments? Sorry, Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious, maybe any of you could answer, how many HRAs do we have in Minnesota that would be doing this?
Senator Xiong?
Maybe,
One of the testifiers?
Madam Chair, Senator, there's very few of the HRAs. And particularly would be Dakota County has a separate HRA with a separate board. They would be eligible. St. Paul HRA is non-separate. It's separate, but it's all wrapped into the city. So the HRA measure of this thing is very limited.
Senator Drazkowski.
So thank you, Madam Chair. So you had mentioned that this would be a lower risk than the existing authority that you have in the pension fund area. Tell us more about that.
Mr. Perry.
Madam Chair, Senator, again, these are not pension dollars. So under the previous statute change in 118A, the same subset of cities is allowed to invest in an equity index fund. The stock market tends to be much higher risk than a fixed income investment. And so currently cities invest in a variety of securities to manage their long-term reserves, typically mortgage-backed securities or CDs or other types of investments. This measure only allows them to invest in a fund that's 80% guaranteed. Stock market is never guaranteed, and that same authority is allowed for this subset of communities. So we're basically expanding the authority to include fixed income funds that are directed towards housing and that are 80% federally insured or guaranteed by an agency or by the federal government.
Thank you.
Thank you. And apologies to the testifier. I don't know why I called you Mr. Perry, but thank you, Mr. Harris, for this committee can change people. So any other comments or questions from members? Senator Barr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry to go back to this, but it prompted another question. How liquid are these funds?
Mr. Harris.
Madam Chair, Senator, it really depends on the fund that's being offered. Currently, the AFL-CIO has a monthly withdrawal ability. But again, the duration of such funds are typically longer, so they're not as liquid, but it just depends on the funds. And ours in particular is 1 month.
Senator Barr?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess what I'm getting at is the economy cycles, it goes up, it goes down. We have hard times, we have good times. And this is the reserve fund. And if you run into a down economy cycle for, say, a couple of budget years, I wanted to see how liquid this was, if they needed to actually draw them funds, or would they take a serious haircut if they had to have the money right now. That's kind of where I'm getting at on this.
Mr. Harris?
Madam Chair, Senator, they definitely in a fund would not take a haircut depending on the current rate of the fund and how much money they had in it. Now, if you had your funds out managed separately, interest rate risk, you could take a haircut on those types of funds. But in this one, it just depends on what the yield is at that given moment.
I think we're all good. Anyone else? Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing no further discussion, Senator Xiong moves SF 4367 to be recommended to pass and placed on general orders. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. SF 4367 recommended to pass and place on general orders.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next up is Senate File 4555.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair and members. We are taking up Senate File 4555. Yeah, as I speak, I guess the staff will make their way up. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Xiong. Stand by.
And so,
Senator Xiong, would you like to move the A5?
Madam Chair, move the A5 amendment.
Members, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. A5 passes.
All right, Madam Chair, the A5 amendment contains the policy provisions that will be incorporated into the Omnibus. This hearing will be focused on a walkthrough of the contents of the amendment. We will not be taking final action today. The committee will lay the bill over, and members can expect a markup on Friday or tomorrow. And with that, I will turn it over to council to walk us through the DE.
Thank you, Senator Xiong. Council? I'm sorry. Yes, whichever would like to proceed first, please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lewis Hunter, Council for Local Government. Members, if you'd like to turn your attention to the bill summary for bill number 4555, it should be in your packet, as proposed to be amended by the delete everything. There are two articles, state government and local government. I would just ask members to turn to page 4. The local government article is much shorter. So I'm going to proceed first. Sections 1 through 3 of the local government article come from the bill that was just before the committee, SF 4367, relating to qualified county and city governments and housing redevelopment authorities investing funds. I won't, since that testimony was just received, I won't belabor it. But that is sections 1 through 3 of the local government article. Sections 4 through 11 all relate to town or township governance. These come from Senator Bolden's bill SF 3613, which was also heard, I believe, last week or earlier this week. Contains various updates to township formation, governance, and elections, updates to clerk's ability to notarize documents, simplifies how towns can convey real estate, and the procedure of town meetings, and in particular, how the first town meeting is held after a new town is formed. Sections 12 through 36, these sections of the local government article all relate to the Ramsey County HR update bill, which is being carried by Chair Xiong. They're mostly technical updates to a chapter of statute that relates purely to Ramsey County and Ramsey County personnel. Does things like strike HR director and write in chief human resources officer. There are a couple sections that are not purely non-substantive. So section 17 updates an outdated payroll voucher certification process, helps facilitate payroll and make sure that people get paid correctly in conformance with the practices that Ramsey County uses. And section 25 makes some adjustments to certain unclassified employee positions for consistency within Ramsey County. Section 37 contains repealers, obsolete parts of, again, that Ramsey County personnel statute after all of those changes made by the bill, SF 4625, but it also includes the repealer, Senator Clark's bill that was just heard today, which he and his testifier spoke to, so I won't speak more about that one. And then in section 38, we have an effective date section. This provides for local approval of the Ramsey County HR update section, since that is special legislation that requires approval. And it also includes that repealer from Senator Clark's bill 4037, and that is effective upon final enactment. And that is the end of the local government article sections. Happy to answer questions.
Members, any questions or comments? All right, we can move on to the next section.
Yep.
Madam Chair and members, Stephanie James from Senate Council. I'll walk through Article 1. I'll be walking through the amendment itself, the A5, page 1, section 1. This is a bill that the committee will hear on Friday. It makes the toboggan the official sled of the state of Minnesota. Section 2 on page 1 is from Senator Wickland's bill. It extends the expiration date of the Legislative Commission on Cybersecurity to 2035. Section 3 is a bill that will be heard on Friday in this committee. This is a bill from Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, Senate File 4177, as it's anticipated to be amended on Friday. Section 3 changes the positions that the Secretary of State can appoint and specifies that certain of those positions serve at the pleasure of the Secretary of State. Section 4 reduces the number of copies of the legislative manual that the Secretary of State has to provide to various entities. Section 5 on page 2, also from Senate File 4177, authorizes the Secretary of State to terminate a business entity if the entity makes a payment that is rejected or dishonored. On page 3, section 6 is Senator Klein's bill, Senate File 3737, that makes January Snow Professionals Appreciation Month. Section 7 on page 3 is a bill that the committee will hear on Friday, creating a week of observance of Hmong heritage. This is Senator Paz's bill, Senate File 4736. On page 4, section 8 is the provision from Senator Johnson Stewart, Senate File 1714, as it was amended in labor after state government. On page 5, section 9 is from Senator Johnson Stewart's bill 3860. This changes the date for the Compensation Council to set salaries for the constitutional officers and the agency heads. Section 10 on page 5 is the beginning of a series of sections from Senator Johnson Stewart's Senate File 3858, and these all relate to the state practices for energy and water use in state facilities. Section 10 defines terms. On page 6, section 11 eliminates a monthly reporting requirement from agencies to the Commissioner of Administration. Section 12 creates a requirement for agencies to report to the Commissioner of Admin on material, energy, and water consumption in facilities that the agency has custodial control of. Section 13 requires agencies to maintain energy and water benchmarks and goals. Section 14 requires the Office of Enterprise Sustainability to set and publish enterprise-wide goals towards sustainability. On page 8 begins a series of sections 15 through 18, that are from Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger's Senate File 4149 that you've just heard about. Section 15 has that removal of the for particular grants on line 8.11. Senate Section 16 on page 9 has the provision that removes the ability for certain data to be shared, certain private non-public data that identifies a person when that person has submitted a comment about potential fraud. Section 17 is a technical change to correct a cross-reference error that resulted from law changes in 2022. Section 18 lists types of recipients of grants that are subject to a provision that terminates a grant agreement when the recipient is convicted of a criminal offense related to a state grant agreement. Section 19 at the bottom of page 9 is from Senator Mann's Bill 3854. This allows MMB to forego a reverse auction to procure a pharmacy benefit manager for CKIP if the commissioner's analysis of the cost benefit of using it is inconclusive. On page 11, section 20 is Senate File 4555, Senator Xiong's bill. This restricts the eligibility for block grants for operations of public television grants to those stations that were certified in 2024. I'll note that on line 11.13, the year here in the bill here is 2024, and that is an amendment to the original bill. Section 21 is Senator Cwodzinski's bill, Senate File 4637. You've just heard this bill. This is the one about the Historical Society, removing the restrictions on who they can contract with to manage the State Historic Site Network. Section 22 on the bottom of page 11 is another provision from Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger's Senate File 4177. This is in the unemployment insurance chapter, and this modifies the way liens are recorded and how notice is provided within the system, a modernization as they've described. Section 23 on page 13 is another provision that's part of Senate File 3858 from Senator Johnson Stewart about the energy and water use. I will note that on line 13.10, we've corrected the statute site there, 16B.32, and that's the end of the policy article for state government.
Members, any questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Senator Xiong.
We have a final piece from council.
Thank you. Proceed.
Yes, Lewis Hunter again. I just wanted to say the local government, because of all the all the pieces and sections from the Ramsey County, there actually are more sections in local government. There are just fewer bills that those sections come from. So it is not actually shorter in that sense.
All right. Senator Barr, if you have something, or maybe not, hang on. We're going to do markup and vote out this tomorrow, so right now it's going to be laid over. Do you still have a comment, Senator Barr, or do you want to wait till tomorrow? All right, well, we'll look forward to that. Anybody else? Okay. With that, SF 455 as amended is laid over.
All right, thank you for that, Senator Gustafson. Next up, we have Senate File 2320, Senator Pappas. Looks like she is here, or making her way here. Oh, hi, Senator Pappas. Thank you, Senator Pappas. Whenever you are ready to go, you may proceed.
And I could just invite my witnesses to join me.
Certainly. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for hearing Senate File 2320. The bill authorizes local governments to prohibit or restrict a person from possessing a dangerous weapon, ammunition, or explosives within a building or on land owned or leased by the local government unit, such as a rec center, a library, a city hall, or city parks. It creates a requirement that the local unit of government post signs giving notice of the ban and establishes a misdemeanor penalty for a violation. Unlike private, non-governmental establishments, which can regulate the carrying of firearms in their spaces, there's no authority for a local government unit to ban firearms from being carried into local government-owned or leased buildings and land, which may include libraries, recreation, and community centers. Other governmental facilities, including most notably schools and courts, have provisions in state law that permit them to ban dangerous weapons while knowingly on school property. Letting local governments have the local control and ability to ban firearms in government-owned and leased buildings like our libraries and our recreation centers will be a critical step in helping to prevent any gun violence in our communities. This means that any city, if they decide that they want to ban guns and weapons on the buildings they own and lease, that they have the local control to make that decision based on their community members' want. And Mr. Chairman, I have with me the president of the St. Paul City Council, Rebecca Naker. And then we also have Katie. Katie, you want to come up too? Or is she?
Certainly. Councilmember Naker, whenever you're ready, please state your name for the record and you may proceed.
Good morning, Chair Xiong and members. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Rebecca Naker. I'm president of the St. Paul City Council, and I'm honored to be here today speaking on behalf of the City of St. Paul in support of this legislation. I have talking points here in front of me, but I decided that instead of using those, I'm just going to tell you about my day today. First order of business, I have an 11 and a 12-year-old, so I got them to school. At the school, there's a sign that says you can't bring guns inside. Next order of business was an 8 a.m. coffee meeting at Wildflower Coffee on West 7th Street. As I approached the building, there was a sign on the coffee shop telling me I couldn't bring guns inside. My next stop was work. I work at City Hall, Ramsey County Courthouse. As I walk in, not only is there security, can't bring guns into my place of work. And then finally, I came here to meet with you. And as I came into this building, there's security. And in order to bring a gun into here, I would have to show my conceal and carry permit. I, unfortunately, am not going to be going to any rec centers, any parks, or any libraries today. But if I were, those would be the only places in my entire day where I would be able to bring a firearm into those spaces. No signage, no security, no questions asked. That's not because the City of St. Paul wants it to be that way. That's because we are barred in state statute right now from doing what any coffee shop on the corner can do. And it is not theoretical. Just last year, we had 3 separate incidents in which someone brought a firearm to a public beach, to a public park, and to rec centers. So I'm sure you'll hear some testimony today about the Second Amendment, the Constitution, and what I'm here today to tell you is this is not about the Constitution. This is about consistency, and it's about common sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council President. Next up, Katie Topinka. Please state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Katie Topinka. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Relations for the City of Minneapolis. I'm here on behalf of the city. Unfortunately, Mayor Fry was not able to attend today, but I am pleased to be here to give testimony on behalf of the City of Minneapolis in support of this bill. As Council President Naker already said, local governments do not have the authority to ban weapons in city-owned or leased buildings. And for Minneapolis, this does include City Hall because unlike St. Paul, we don't have a courthouse in Minneapolis City Hall. So we aren't able to ban weapons in that building. And it's a building where we, of course, invite members of the public to come in and participate in the democratic process. Our elected officials, like many of you, have been receiving an increase in threats over the last year. and quite frankly, have our staff. And the city would like to be able to put in place safety measures to ban weapons in those buildings so that we can ensure the safety of staff, the public, and elected officials. In addition, as Council President Naker mentioned, the city has parks and recreational facilities where we also cannot ban guns. I bring my kids, 11 and 8-year-old, to a recreational center in Minneapolis every morning before school for their before-school care, and so that is not a place where the city can choose to ban weapons. And so we appreciate Senator Pappas for bringing this bill forward. We think local governments should have the authority to make a decision about what is right for them in the buildings that they manage and oversee. So I'm happy to be here to testify in support of this bill today.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And we have joining us with us remotely Mariah Day. Please state your name for the record, and you may begin. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm sorry I can't be there in person today. I unfortunately had some scheduling conflicts that kept me out of town today, but thank you for allowing me to testify remotely. I just wanted to briefly say Mariah Day with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. NSSF is the trade association for the firearms, ammunition, hunting, and recreational shooting sports industry, and appreciate, again, the opportunity to speak today. SF 2320 proposes to eliminate Minnesota's longstanding firearm preemption framework, and that ensures that firearm regulations are consistent statewide. Doing so would result in a patchwork of conflicting local ordinances, create legal confusion, cause economic harm, and introduce additional compliance challenges for your constituents. And that's not just conjecture. As you're no doubt aware, some local governments have already made it clear that they intend to severely limit the ability of individuals living in or visiting their cities to exercise their right to keep and bear many of the most popular firearms in America. Those are firearms that are protected under the Second Amendment, of course. And Minnesota's firearm and outdoor industry is aware of lots of these types of situations because we are made up of a lot of small and mid-sized businesses, local retailers, sporting goods stores, family-owned companies. The firearm industry is also heavily regulated under federal and state law. And while a patchwork of local regulations would affect our entire industry, it would disproportionately impact small businesses. Uncertainty also discourages investment. Manufacturers and distributors evaluating where to expand facilities or to establish operations put a premium on stable regulatory systems. Eliminating preemption would signal additional unpredictability and risk. And unfortunately, that would also push future investments and jobs away from Minnesota towards surrounding states. I won't belabor the other points I made in my testimony, which you have before you, I believe, today, but do want to just briefly summarize by saying that Senate File 2320 would essentially replace the declarative preemption with confusion. It would replace consistency with fragmentation and stability with uncertainty. So I appreciate your time today and would be happy to stand for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, thank you. And then we have Anna Leamy signed up to testify. Welcome to State and Local Government Committee. And then we also have Brian Gosh that's here. Please make your way. Hello, welcome to the State and Local Government Committee. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Anna Leamy, Director of Government Relations and Advocacy for the Minnesota Governor's Caucus. Senate File 2320 would authorize local units of government, including cities, counties, and townships, to prohibit lawful firearm possession in government-owned buildings and on government-controlled land. While this is framed as a limited grant of authority, this proposal would significantly undermine Minnesota's long-standing framework of uniform firearm laws and create serious challenges for law-abiding citizens. Minnesota's current statewide permit-to-carry system provides clear, consistent rules for lawful carry across all jurisdictions. This uniformity ensures that permit holders can confidently exercise their rights without needing to navigate a maze of shifting local restrictions. Permit holders already must meet statutory eligibility requirements, complete training,
and are already subject to disqualifying criteria under both state and federal law. Senate File 2320 breaks from that model by allowing each local government to establish its own firearm prohibitions for public property. As a result, lawful carry could be permitted in one city building but criminalized in the next, often without clear notice to the public. Senate File 2320 does not target criminal misuse. It targets lawful conduct. It imposes new restrictions on those already following the law while doing nothing to deter those who ignore it. By delegating this authority to local governments, Senate File 2320 also invites a patchwork of inconsistent regulations across Minnesota. This fragmented regulatory scheme would place an unreasonable burden on responsible gun owners attempting to comply with the law. Clear, uniform laws promote compliance and effective enforcement. A patchwork of local prohibitions does the opposite. For these reasons, I urge you to vote no on Senate File 2320. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Gaush.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Please state your
Chair.
name for the record, and you may begin. I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Brian Gosh. I'm a lawyer, registered lobbyist with the National Rifle Association, here today to oppose Senate File 2320. The House had a bill similar to this, and it was defeated over there this session. My opposition testimony is going to pertain to some of the remarks you heard from the proponents, and I'm going to add on to some of the things you heard from the opponents. So one of the things the proponents said was private business can stop you from carrying a firearm if they post a sign. Why shouldn't local government? Well, I don't have to go to the barista. I don't have to go to that coffee shop if I don't want to, if they're posting no firearms allowed. But government services and local government buildings are my one-stop shop. It's the only place I can go to get those services that local government provides. If I want to get that service or that item, I have to be able to go into that building to do so. Also, you're disarming the law-abiding citizen from the parking lot to the entrance of that building as well. And some of these places can be dangerous with unsavory characters around them. Currently, under Minnesota law, you are the sole determiners of firearm regulation in Minnesota. And one of the reasons for that is so that you have consistency across the state, so that no matter where you travel, you have the same rules applied. You're not looking at a chart to see, okay, now I'm entering St. Paul, what are the rules? Now I'm going to Hibbing, what are the rules? You know what the rules are because they're the same across the state of Minnesota. Various areas of the law in Minnesota are like that. They require that same uniformity across the state. For example, in motor vehicles, wherever you travel in Minnesota, whatever county, township, city, you know you have to use your turn signal. You know you have to stay in the right lane, so on and so forth. The provisional law that pertains to that is 169.022 in Minnesota statutes, where it reads, the provisions of this chapter shall be applicable and uniform throughout the state and in all political subdivisions and municipalities therein, and no local authority shall enact or enforce any rule or regulation in conflict with the provisions of this chapter unless expressly authorized herein. Other areas of the law that would be similar would be criminal law, taxation and revenue, human rights and civil rights, environmental protections, and elections law, uniform across the state. Finally, I'll end with how this bill moves a different direction from one of your neighbors to the west. South Dakota not only allows you to carry in local government buildings, but not this session, but the session before, they passed a bill that said you have to allow local government employees to carry in those buildings as well. So with that, I'll stand by for questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you. With that, members, any questions or comments to the bill? Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is maybe for council, but also perhaps for Senator Pappas. And maybe for Chair Necker, what is the framework around where these signs can still remain? So when I volunteer at my grandkids' school, there is a sign. I heard her say that at St. Paul City Hall, there is a ban on guns. Can schools do this already? Can only the federal, if I could have just a little overview of, yes, public schools, yes, federal government, yes, state buildings, that would help me a lot in the context of this discussion.
Senator Pappas or Council President?
Mr. Chairman and our own council can help with this. So as we mentioned, schools can post signs. A courthouse can post a sign, but City Hall cannot. In St. Paul, they have a combined courthouse, city hall, so they're able to ban guns. The sign description is on the back of the bill. But there are, what's the part of the patchwork problem is that, as we said, libraries, recreational centers, pools, parking lots that are adjacent to those facilities are not able to ban weapons. So that's kind of the inconsistency here.
Testifier, Council President.
Yes, thank you, Chair Xiong, and thank you so much for the question, Senator. And yes, I would agree, and I think the fact is that we already have a patchwork as a result of that, to one of the previous points that was made. And so I think that's a really relevant point as well, that it's already inconsistent. There was also a question about signage, and I think one of the things that the city is seeking in this is actually the ability to put up signage. So I think there was a previous comment about not being clear about the rules. We want to be very clear about the rules. We are not allowed to do that right now.
Senator Johnson-Stewart.
Thank you, Chair Zhang. Yeah, I want to emphasize that when I walk into my children's school, my grandkids' school, and I see that sign, that gives me comfort. I mean, I realize a sign is not a shield, but I also know that it's very clear for me to understand where guns are and where they are not permitted. When I go into Great Clips and I see the sign, when I go into Caribou, when I go into Lund's, wherever. But I have been wondering, like, why are there only signs some places? And I'm a gun owner. We have lots of guns in our house. They just happen to be locked up separate from the ammunition that is used in them. I like that very much, and I would push back on the testimony that said this is unclear at all. On line 2.6 and 2.7, it clearly says what the sign must say. I think for the last, somebody else can fill me in, but the last number of years, we've seen these signs in our communities. We are well used to them. And so I think the clarity is there. So thank you for answering my question, and I will support this bill wholeheartedly.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
I believe, if I'm not incorrect, that churches and synagogues and mosques also can ban guns on their premises.
Senator Barr, you were, Senator Matthews, I think you were next on the list. No? Senator Drazkowski, then.
I'd like to ask one of the opponents who came up and talked a little more. I don't have the law in front. I don't have
Mr. Bosch or Ms. Leamy?
Ms. Leamy, yeah. Mr. Chair,
Senator Drazkowski.
I understand that schools and courthouses where the courts are actually located are just strictly prohibited in law from they don't have to post signs there. They may post them anyway, but there's strict prohibitions and laws for those places. The concealed carry law formed out the ability for private businesses and private buildings to post signs and ask the concealed carry holders not to bring their weapons in with them. But those first two are prohibited strictly in law. So there's different categories here. I don't have the law. I was actually at the hearing, Mr. Chair, when the concealed carry law was passed. And it was like 2003 or something like that. But I don't know, maybe there's been some amendments to it since, but it would be, I don't know that what was represented here earlier is quite accurate. But with that, Mr. Chair, I would just, I've got some questions on the bill too. It appears to me, looking at the construct of the bill on page 1, that the local units of government have the ability to pass a resolution and then initiated from that resolution is a state misdemeanor. Is that how I understand, Senator Pappas, the construct of this bill? Because on 1.22, they're guilty of a misdemeanor if a concealed carry holder brings their firearm into one of these buildings in a city that passes this particular ordinance. Am I reading it right?
Senator Pappas?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on line 1.22, it does say you're guilty of a misdemeanor, correct?
Senator Drazkowski?
Well, that's what I see too, Mr. Chair. So let's think about this, members. We've got the local unit of government passing an ordinance that creates a state misdemeanor. I don't know if I've seen that before in statute. I don't, maybe council could tell us, is that how this bill works?
Council, local gov, state gov.
Senator Drazkowski, because this bill has a criminal law element, maybe our criminal counsel would be better equipped to answer that question. I do know possession of a firearm without a permit is also a crime, I think a gross misdemeanor in some cases. So there are other criminal laws, but whether there's an analog that's closer to this, I may need to do some more looking into that or check with our criminal law counsel for judiciary on that one.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, we are saying it's guilty of a misdemeanor. We are not giving the local authority permission to issue misdemeanors.
Well,
Senator Drazkowski.
Well, Mr. Chair and Senator Pappas, we are. Because you're giving the local government unit the authority to create an ordinance that results directly and immediately in a misdemeanor. And it would be written into law with this particular bill. So I have to analyze that more, Senator Pappas, but, and members, but I don't know that I've seen that anywhere in law. I struggle. You know, everybody knows where everybody's at on this issue, I think. But I want to share something with my liberal colleagues because the media hasn't talked about it. And, you know, liberal thinkers, especially in this state, continue to believe if you put up a sign somewhere that everybody's going to adhere to it. And you know who adheres to it? Is the good guys and gals, not the bad guys. They don't pay attention to the signs. And that's what we have going on here. And I just beg you to look at that reality. The Annunciation school shooter, here's what he had in his manifesto. The media doesn't talk about this. Here's what he said. It's in quotes. I remember reading it the day of, or a day after the event. And here it is again. He said in his manifesto, I recently heard a rumor that James Holmes, the Aurora Theater shooter, may have chosen venues that were gun-free zones. I would probably aim the same way. Holmes wanted to make sure his victims would be unarmed. That's why I and many others like schools so much. At least for me, I am focused on them. That's the bad guy with the gun, members. And that's what happens if we continue to create gun-free zones where there's no ability for good guys and gals with guns, because they don't have guns, to resist with the same force that bad guys and gals come into the school with. And we can duck our heads in the sand and pretend away. And as long as we continue to do that, we'll continue to get what we currently got. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure that you have many more bills to hear today, but I just want to give you the example of what happened in St. Paul. Because we cannot ban guns in a recreation center, a recreational center employee brought his gun to work with him. There was an altercation in the parking lot right outside the rec center, and that rec center employee pulled out his gun and shot someone. Had he known that the rule was no guns could be brought into the rec center, he might have punched somebody. He might have knocked them over, but he wouldn't have shot them and ruined his life and the unfortunate person he killed. So I understand that when there are bad people out there with AK-45 weapons, they're going to find a vulnerability in a free society, wherever they're going to find it. But maybe with laws like this, we can actually prevent those type of circumstances that I'm talking about.
Senator Cran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think Senator Jaskowski laid out, openly for at least most of us, like you said, we know where we are. But Senator Pappas, you just described an element that I don't believe would be a cause or an impact or have any impact on the scenario you just described. That person was an employee of the city of St. Paul, correct?
Yes,
Senator Pappas.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator Coran, yes, he had a legal gun permit to have the gun.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that, however, if guns were banned at his place of employment, he would not have had that gun.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Coran.
Senator Pappas, there's nothing there. I'm pretty sure the city of St. Paul likely has a no weapons allowed for employees. They're still allowed, an employer's allowed to be able to determine the work conditions for their employees. And so I don't believe that scenario applies to this particular issue. But the signs are right. They went up all over the place, and now they come down because actually, at the end of the day, signs don't stop anything. And it's really a list of political ideologies that businesses choose to wear on their sleeve. If those businesses choose to do that, they're picking their customers, right? We all read those signs differently. You may read them so you don't go in them. I may, or so you want to go in them and have some false sense of security that a sign matters. They don't matter, and it punishes the individuals, the honest, law-abiding citizens that have a right to carry. No rec center sign, with or without the sign, is going to stop a weapon from going in there because the criminals don't care. It's a false sense of security. I think it's an invasion of our privacy, and I agree with the one testifier. We have to interact with government. They're forced to. We're not required to interact with any other private business. We have many options practically for everything we do, and the law-abiding people are not the problem. And none of this has any impact on the most violent. You can create a misdemeanor for carrying in. We're not even punishing or charging, in many cases, violent felons with guns over multiple incidences. If they happen to get charged and they happen to be convicted, there's no rightful or useful consequence being applied. All this is feel good. It's pandering, and it's creating a false sense of security that any sign matters in that environment. If we take care, we want to make things safe. Let's have crimes, punish those that are carrying it. I've said it forever, and Bob Fletcher, the city or Ramsey County Sheriff, tell you that 90 people that have committed 98% of the violent shootings in St. Paul. Let's put them in jail. Let's not make a free opportunity, or like we have for the schools. Let's pretend they're gun-free zones and make our children victims, or the most likely victims. And we've done that for 30 years. The signs don't matter. It's never going to affect it. But having or maybe having the right sign outside the schools. The school sign should say, "Beware. Someone may be armed and they're ready to take care of business there," right? That somebody's going to, because everyone looks for any place with no resistance. Everybody likes an unarmed victim. And I don't think this does anything to it. So, Mr. Chair,
Can I talk again or not?
what's the pathway for this?
Yeah. Okay.
This one is going to general orders.
I request a roll call.
A roll call being requested. A roll call will be given. Senator Senator Pappas. Do you
Yeah,
want to
Mr.
respond?
Chairman, Council President Naker would like to make a statement.
Thank you so much.
Council President Naker.
Thank you so much, Chair. I don't necessarily expect to convince anyone on this committee. I have a sense that some minds may already be made up. But I do think it's important to note that just because a behavior is legal doesn't mean that we're allowed to do it in every given space, including government spaces. So we are not allowed to smoke a cigarette inside a library or inside any other government space, even though we have to access that government space. So we ask people to put their cigarettes out and not have those with them, even though they need to access that government space. I would argue that having your firearm on you at all times is like a cigarette. It's something you're allowed to do. It's not something that you have to have physically on you at all times. And I would further say it's not about the signs. The signs are a way of telling people what the rules are. But it's about being able to prohibit these items within our city and within our city spaces. And to be very clear, there aren't, in my experience, good guys and bad guys. There are people who have something on them that in a moment might turn into a murderous episode. And if they don't have that on them, it will not turn into a murderous episode. It would be great if we could divide the world into those who are good guys and those who are bad guys. I don't believe the world works that way 99.9% of the time. Thank you.
Well said. Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Senator Pappas, for bringing this bill. I'm a huge advocate for what you're suggesting, so thank you very much. I appreciate the civility of this discussion. I don't know why we're so divided on this, and sometimes I think about how history is going to judge this, 50 years from now. What will they look back and go, which side of this fence were you on? And I think history will judge that you were on the right side of this fence. And I know I was perhaps the only Democrat that was opposed to metal detectors coming into the Capitol. I wanted this place to be, so lovingly welcoming to little fifth graders as they run off the school bus and enter this bastion of government and freedom and the people's house and all that this place entails. And I was telling that to a group of students, and there were 3 girls in the front of the classroom that were kind of whispering as I was going through that soliloquy, and I just looked at them. I said, would you disagree with that, or whatever I said? And they said they had just been here on a tour and they didn't feel safe, and pre-metal detectors. And I looked at them and I did a 180 instantly on I never thought for a minute how many young students are coming into this place and being scared because guns are allowed here. And so I think I quickly became, along with my Democratic colleagues, in favor of metal detectors in the state capitol because of 3 students that shared that anecdote with me. I'm surprised that parks and recreational centers. I don't know. I just thank you for bringing this forward. It's so important that our young people feel safe wherever they're going. And I don't know if this is a question council can answer, but I did hear the phrase conceal and carry a couple times during the testimony now. And do we have conceal and carry, or do we have open and carry licensing in Minnesota? And I'm just curious what the law says.
Answer, maybe a council.
Senator Cwodzinski, I am in communication with our criminal law counsel to try and get some answers to some questions that have come up. I do not know exactly. Could you repeat your question one more time?
And it's not for this body, perhaps, so I didn't mean to put, but I'm just curious. I've heard the phrase conceal and carry.
Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. I've heard the phrase conceal and carry a couple times, and I just don't know the difference between conceal and carry and open and carry. And if there is a difference between those 2 laws and those 2 licenses somebody has to get, and so if you could relay that to the proper council person and have them get back to me, I'm just curious because what that law actually says. So again, Senator Pappas, thank you.
Senator Drazkowski.
Mr. Chair, I understand if you want to open carry in Minnesota, you need a concealed carry permit for that as well. And so both of them fall under concealed carry law, I believe.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate this bill. When you bring up the rec center example, I think about all of the people that are in there, and sometimes people are using locker rooms and maybe they're changing. And I worry about maybe access, that someone who maybe brought their firearm in and then they left it in a locker, or they left it by their bag and then someone else gets it. So that would be a concern for me, and prohibiting those in those spaces would remove that access. I also appreciate the local control. We talk all the time about how cities know what's best for their cities, and we should allow local controls. So I think this is actually being consistent with local control. So thank you for bringing this up.
Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think we've had some pretty good points made today. Mr. Chair, I find it quite ironic, I guess. The more time I spend in government, then the more time I'm around this building. The irony of a group of individuals such as ourselves or cities that are sitting in front of us that are here to protect the rights of individuals consistently trying to reduce the rights of individuals. It's frustrating, and maybe it's just the fact that we live in this great country that we call America, that we're so soft. We're so soft of the bubble that we live in. And we forget the fact that that bubble that we live in is brought to us by extreme violence throughout the world to protect our borders, to protect this country. And I think we lose sight of that. And you couldn't be more wrong when you talked about cigarettes versus weaponry. We are guaranteed in the Constitution the right to carry a gun. I'm sorry to say we always have been, regardless of the laws that we pass here. We don't have the right to restrict that. Whole cloth. And Senator Cwodzinski, I think your ignorance on that portion, and I love you like a brother, but that goes to show you exactly how little we know of. And maybe it's just a time frame thing. Maybe it's because we're 100 years removed from the shotgun over the fireplace, and everybody doesn't have weapons in their homes like they once did. But we do have to remember where we came from. We have to remember why the laws in place now are in place now. And we have to remember, as the government, you serve all the people, even if it's Minneapolis and St. Paul, the whole people of the state. You represent them. I mean, those are people that, when you start restricting their rights for whatever reason, if it makes you feel safer, sure, fine. We're not being good legislators. We are not being good city council members at that point. This is a far wide and ranging bill that is going to, I agree with what the testifier said. This is a very strange thing. What if I drove from my home and I stopped at a park to let my dog out? All of a sudden I'm breaking the law. That's a problem. Anytime this body passes a bill that makes me a non-law-abiding citizen, I think we're doing wrong. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, any other questions or comments to the bill? Thank you, Senator Pappas, for bringing this bill. I will be a yes vote on this, and I'm not here to convince anybody on this board. I think our like what they've said, and our minds are made up. I think this is just our local government's trying to make it safer. We certainly got plenty of emails. Those emails are very important, whether you're for or against. I understand the arguments that it's in the Bill of Rights, it's in our Constitution, but I think they didn't have the machine guns back when they drafted the Constitution, and we're just in a different time with many different situations that have unfortunately come up really close to this body. And I thank you, Senator Pappas. With you, I'll give you the final word.
Mr. Chairman, speaking of the Constitution, I believe it was a well-armed militia in the Second Amendment, and that was the original intent, but we don't have to go down that road. Thank you very much for the hearing today and for the, as you said, the very civil discussion.
Thank you. And with that, staff will take the roll.
Chair Xiong?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gustafson?
Yes.
Vice Chair McQuaid?
Yes.
Lead Lang?
No.
Senator Barr?
No.
Senator Cwodzinski?
Yep.
Senator Drazkowski?
No.
Senator Fateh?
Yes.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger?
Yes.
Senator Johnson-Stewart?
Yes.
Senator Corian?
No.
Senator Matthews? Mr. Chair, there are 7 ayes and 5 noes.
There being 7 ayes and 5 noes, sorry, we're sending this, there being 7 ayes and 5 noes. I'm sorry. There being 7 ayes. I'm sorry, there wasn't a motion.
I was wondering about
Yes,
that.
I am sorry about that.
Motion. Yeah.
Members, we will have to redo that roll call. I'm so sorry. With that, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger moves Senate File 2320 to be recommended to pass and to be placed on general orders. Again, sorry, staff will take the roll.
Chair Xiong,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gustafson,
Yes.
Vice Chair McQuaid,
Yes.
Lead Lang,
No.
Senator Barr,
Nope.
Senator Cwodzinski,
Heck, yeah.
Senator Drazkowski,
No.
Senator Fateh,
Yes.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger,
Yes.
Senator Johnson Stewart,
Heck, yeah.
Senator Foran,
No.
Senator Matthews. Mr. Chair, there are 7 ayes and 5 noes.
All right, again, members, there being 7 ayes and 5 noes, Senate File 2320 is recommended pass and to be placed on general orders. Thank you. With that, next up we have Senate File. Oh, I'm sorry, members. I've been informed that elections will be beginning pretty soon. Senate File 4640 will be moved to tomorrow's agenda. And with that, we are adjourned.